An ordinary family of three, along with their dog, set out on a hiking trip to relax and enjoy the beauty of nature. It wasn't a difficult hike and they planned to return home the next day. But during the night, the temperature in the forest dropped sharply and it became very cold. When no one could reach them the following day, it quickly became clear that something had gone wrong. Police went to the area, but all they found was the family's car sitting there alone. A massive search and rescue operation began. More than 400 people were involved, along with the specialized equipment. People across the country followed the case. The first day passed, then the second. But there was still no sign of family, no personal belongings, no footprints, no clues of any kind. It was as if the family had simply vanished. Police began questioning witnesses, but what they learned only raised more questions than answers. Everyone was asking the same thing. How could a family of experienced hikers, people who had visited this area many times and knew how to navigate the terrain, simply disappear without leaving a single trace? What really happened? Hi everyone! Today we are going to talk about the mysterious disappearance of the Usoltsev family. It happened quite recently, in the fall of 2025. This case is full of strange details, contradictions, and confusing witness statements. There are many unanswered questions and a lot to discuss. So let's dive into the story and try to figure out what might have happened. Zheleznogorsk is a small industrial city in Siberia located about 60 kilometers from the city of Krasnoyarsk. Around 90,000 people live there. The town is surrounded by forests and taiga. This is where the Usoltsev family lived: Sergei, Irina, and their daughter Arina. Friends describe the family as very close. They spend a lot of time together and loved traveling and taking trips as a family. Irina Usoltsev was 48 years old. She worked as a psychologist and coach and ran a blog about psychology. In her posts, she talked about personal growth, relationships, and raising children. She also offered psychological consultations and organized women's workshops. On her blog, Irina often shared photos and videos from the family trips and outdoor adventures. Her friends described her as emotional and very open. She connected easily with people and enjoyed sharing her thoughts and experiences. She was also interested in spiritual practices, energy work, and self-development. Many people remember her as a bright and charismatic person. Sergei Usoltsev was 64 years old, a businessman and an experienced traveler. He owned a company that manufactured paint products. Friends described him as energetic and constantly on the move. He loved traveling and outdoor adventures. Sergei knew the taiga very well and had gone on many hiking trips over the years. He was familiar with numerous hiking roads across the Krasnoyarsk region. Their daughter Arina was 5 years old. People described her as a curious and active child. She was a long-awaited daughter and her parents devoted a lot of attention to her. They often took her along on trips, and from an early age Sergei introduced her to hiking and outdoor activities. In one video, the family can be seen in the mountains while Sergei shows Arina how to put on ski boots. The family also had a cat and a corgi named Lada. At the time, Lada was already 11 years old. Despite her age, she was still quite active and the family often brought her along on their trips. From the outside, the family seemed happy and stable. However, one of Irina's friends later said that the perfect image wasn't the full story. According to her, the couple had been having problems and had even considered getting divorced. At the same time, Irina continued presenting an image of a happy family on social media. This was partly connected to her profession. She worked as a psychologist and often helped couples deal with relationship problems. Neighbors also confirmed that Sergei had only been visiting the family home about twice a week for quite some time. Still, according to Irina's friend, the couple managed to maintain their relationship. She said that before leaving for the trip, they seemed to be in good spirits and were not arguing. The day before the trip, Irina recorded a video for her blog and asked her assistant to publish it later. In the video she said, "Today we are going on a little trip, my husband, my child and me. We are driving about 200 kilometers from Krasnoyarsk, maybe even more. It's a beautiful forest area, a place people consider very special. It's called the Manskaya Loop. Tonight we are staying in a small cabin with a sauna, deep in nature. I'm really excited about it." In the video, Irina clearly looks excited about the trip and there is no signs that anything might be wrong. Interestingly, in one of the videos, there were 3 in total, Irina mentioned that at first they planned to leave Irina with her grandmother, because the hike would involve quite a long walk. But Irina insisted that she could handle it and really wanted to go with her parents. The family planned to visit the Koturshinskaya-Belogorye area, a mountainous natural region in Siberia located about 200 kilometers from Krasnoyarsk. It's a popular tourist destination known for its rocky formations, dense taiga forests, and beautiful views. Many visitors come here to hike relatively easy trails and enjoy the scenery. The Usoltsev family often traveled to natural spots, hiking in the mountains and exploring scenic places, so this trip didn't seem unusual at all. But to understand the story better, it helps to know what the taiga actually is. The taiga is a vast northern forest that covers much of Russia and also stretches across Canada and Alaska. It's a wild and sparsely populated region covered with dense coniferous forests, mainly pine, spruce, and large trees. There are very few roads or settlements, and the distance between people can be tens or even 100 kilometers. For someone familiar with this area, the taiga can be extremely difficult to navigate because the forest can look the same for miles in every direction. By late September, autumn has already fully arrived in the taiga, and the weather can be quite harsh. During the day, temperatures usually range between 5 and 12 degrees Celsius, but at night they can drop at around freezing or even below. Rain is common, fog can roll in quickly, and in the mountains the first snow may already appear. It also gets dark early, and once the sun sets, the temperature drops rapidly. Without warm clothing and proper preparation, spending the night in the taiga can be very dangerous. On September 27, 2025, Sergei, Irina and Irina Usoltsev, along with their corgi Lada, arrived by car at a tourist base called Geosfera, near the village of Kuturchin in the Krasnoyarsk region. The family relaxed there and visited the sauna. They needed to rest, because the next day they planned to go on a hike to a place known as the Boratinka Rock Formation and spend the day exploring the area. The next morning, around 10 a.m., they returned their cabin key and spoke with a guide who worked at the base. They asked how to get to a place called the Wish Stone, a popular stop along the trail leading to a rock formation called Malvinka. One tourist who saw them at that moment later remembered them as a friendly couple who seemed curious about the road. By the middle of the day, they were moving toward the Buratinka rock area. At around 5 p.m., another witness, Yaroslava Baranova, saw them at a scenic viewpoint. She described Irina as a calm and smiling. Sergei seemed like a caring father, and Irina looked like an active but well-behaved child. Irina asked Yaroslava to take a few family photos for them. The family looked relaxed and seemed to be enjoying the view. But the witness noticed something unusual. All three of them were dressed lightly, t-shirts and pants, and each had only a small backpack. This seemed strange considering the cool autumn weather. It was obvious they were cold, she said later. This became one of the most puzzling details in the case. If the family had planned a long hike, they would likely have dressed differently. It seemed more likely that they expected only a short walk and planned to return before dark. The weather that day had also been unusual. At midday, temperatures had reached around 25 degrees Celsius, unusually warm for late September. But later, the temperature dropped sharply, and just a few days later, the entire area would be covered in snow. But there were two other witnesses who also claimed to have seen the family. And this is where the story becomes even more confusing. According to investigators, these were the last people to see the family. Their names are Viktor and Lydia Korchagin. They said the family had parked their car near their house. This detail was later confirmed when police found the vehicle there. But it was somewhat unusual. Instead of parking in the designated tourist parking area near the trail, where the most hikers leave their cars, the family had parked near a private home. This led to speculation that someone might have suggested a different trail to them, or that they simply planned to take a short walk nearby. Lydia also shared another strange detail. She said that Irina changed her clothes in the car. She took off a tracksuit and vest and changed into a t-shirt and shorts. Think about it for a moment. Who would change into a t-shirt and shorts for an evening walk in the forest, even if it was supposed to be a short one? The earlier witness had seen the family around 5 p.m. and they already looked cold at the time. And yet, Irina apparently changed into even lighter clothing before heading back into the forest. It's a very strange detail. After that, the family walked into the forest. Late that night, a nearby cell tower recorded the last signal from the Sergei's phone. After that, no one ever saw them again. The next day, September 29, Irina Usoltseva was supposed to show up for work. One of her co-workers noticed that she hadn't come in and wasn't responding to messages. That seemed unusual because Irina normally let people know if she needed to cancel work. The co-worker then contacted Irina's older son, Daniil Usoltsev. Daniil is Irina's son from her first marriage. He tried to reach both his mother and his stepfather, but there was no response. Their phones were unreachable and they didn't reply to any messages. At first, he assumed the family had simply stayed longer on their hike and didn't have cell service. That seemed logical because in the area where the family had gone, there is often no signal at all. Their relatives hoped that maybe the family had decided to stay one more night at the tourist base, or that they were currently driving through an area without reception. But the next day came and the family still hadn't returned home. There was still no words from them. Their phones remained unreachable. So, on September 30, Daniil went to the police and reported the family missing. On October 1st, 2025, volunteers from the search group Search for Missing Children posted a missing person alert on their social media pages about the disappearance of a family of 3. From that moment on, information about the case became public. The very next day, investigators, rescue teams, and volunteers arrived at the scene. In total, more than 50 people gathered there, and a large-scale search operation began. Experienced forensics investigators examined the area and the family's car. The vehicle was locked. There were no signs of forced entry and no indications of a struggle. Inside the car, they found the family personal belongings, some clothing, including part of their warm clothing, documents, and some hiking gear. Among the items was a pack of matches with one small box missing. One item drew particular attention: Irina's purse. She almost always carried it with her. Inside were her documents, wallet, and personal belongings. At the same time, rescuers and volunteers began searching the surrounding area. But because the search only began several days after relatives first raised the alarm, the rescue teams faced serious challenges. By that time, the weather in the area had suddenly turned much worse. Strong winds picked up. It started rain, and then snow began to fall. Temperatures dropped below freezing. For people dressed in light clothing, surviving even one day in such conditions would have been extremely difficult. In the search area, rescuers found no traces at all. No footprints, no personal items, not even paw prints from the family's corgi, which according to one theory may have led the family deeper into the forest. Later, in the evening on October 2nd, rescuers did find what appeared to be a child's footprint, but after following the trail, it ultimately led nowhere. During the investigation, it was discovered that the last signals from the Usoltsev family's phone had been recorded at around 10 p.m. on September 28 in the Kuturchinskaya Belogorye area, about 7 kilometers from the village of Kuturchin, where they have previously been. This area is mountainous and rocky, with very difficult terrain. There are deep cracks and crevices, fields of loose stones, cliffs, and unstable slopes. Investigators found this detail surprising. The location wasn't really in the direction of the usual tourist trail, and it didn't make much sense to go there if the family had originally planned to hike over the rock formation known as Buratinka. On top of that, the terrain there is extremely difficult to navigate, especially at night, and especially with a small child and a dog. So how could they have ended up there at all? And why did their phones stop sending a signal? Perhaps the batteries simply died. Maybe there was no reception deep in the mountains, or perhaps the phones were somehow damaged. The following day the search continued, with even more people joining the effort. More than 200 people, including rescuers, firefighters, police officers, volunteers, professional climbers, and cavers took part in the operation. They searched cliffs, nearby rivers, deep crevices, and caves, even those that were not marked on maps and had no protective barriers. Local residents know that in this area it's easy to misstep, wander off the trail, and literally fall into a hidden pit just a few steps away from what seems like a safe path. The search was made even more difficult by the challenging terrain. poor weather conditions and the lack of communication signals in the forest areas. Meanwhile, police interviewed the missing family's relatives, friends, and local residents. One of Sergei's friends said that Sergei often neglected detailed road planning and proper gear preparation. Instead, he preferred spontaneous and quick trips into nature. This could have led to mistakes when planning this particular hike, possibly overlooking important factors like weather conditions or necessary equipment. According to the friend, for him, the main thing was the thrill, just rushing somewhere, heading out quickly. Planning the road, choosing the right gear, that just wasn't his thing at all. Another strange detail soon emerged. Remember the Korchagin family, the couple who lived in the house where the Usoltsev's car had been parked, and who were the last people to see them? Well, police questioned them as well. And Lydia told investigators that the family had headed toward Mount Buratinka. But later, when speaking to neighbors, she told a completely different story. She said the family had actually gone in the opposite direction toward a much denser part of the forest, where there was barely any trail and where deep vertical caves and pits were located nearby. Lydia is already an elderly woman, so perhaps she simply got confused or forgot some details. She admitted that she had immediately felt something was wrong and had begun to worry about the family after they disappeared into the taiga. But for some reason she never contacted the police. Think about it for a moment. She saw a family with a small child heading into the forest, dressed lightly. That night, temperatures dropped and it became cold. The next morning, she woke up, went outside, and the car was still parked there. No one was inside. Lydia knew the owners of nearby tourist bays well and could have gone to them if she was truly worried. But she didn't. Why? It all seemed very strange. Moreover, her husband Victor told a completely different story. In an interview, he said that the tourist had gotten into another car and driven away with someone else. Many people dismissed his statement, assuming that he is simply an elderly man who had mixed something up. But some investigators did take his words seriously. What if someone had actually offered the family a ride or help getting somewhere faster, and something happened after that? That could explain why nothing has been found to this day. No belongings, no traces. If that were the case, rescuers might have simply been searching in the wrong place all along. The whole situation was incredibly strange. Why would two witnesses, a husband and a wife, tell completely different stories? Were they trying to confuse the investigation? Or are they simply an elderly couple who misunderstood something, forgot details, or mixed up things? In any case, we will return to this family later when discussing the theories surrounding what might have happened, because their home was hiding another secret. Volunteers from the search and rescue group Lisa Alert later reported that after a full week of searching, there were still no clues about the Usoltsev family's disappearance. Severe weather conditions, snow, and low cloud cover made the search even more difficult. Despite that, around 400 people, including rescuers, police officers, dog handlers, and volunteers from multiple regions, continued the operation. Some underground cavities were inspected, but not all of them. Snow and ice had blocked the entrances to many narrow shafts and cracks, making them almost impossible to see. Drones were not always helpful either. The dense forest and rocky cliffs interfered with radio signals and visibility. According to rescue teams, a full-scale search of the area would only be possible in the spring, after the snow melts and the ground stabilizes. During one of the drone's searches, a bear was also spotted in the area, strengthening the theory that a wild animal attack might have been possible. Volunteers were eventually called off the search in October, but professional rescuers and investigators continued their work. Search volunteers later said the most shocking thing they noticed was that they had not found a single campfire site anywhere along the supposed road. There was no ash, no charcoal, no signs of smoke, nothing at all. Earlier I mentioned that one of small boxes of matches was missing from the car, so it would make sense to assume that the family had taken it with them. Volunteers described it as a very strange inconsistency. Because the first thing people usually do when they get lost in the taiga or any other forest at night is build a fire, or at least try to. A fire helps them to stay warm and survive the night. Smoke and flames can also serve as a signal for rescuers. But in Usoltsev's case, there was no fire, no campsite, not even an attempt to make one. The only possible explanation according to the search teams is that the family may have fallen into a crevice or between rocks, suffered serious injuries and were unable to move or died instantly. That's why searchers kept repeating the same words. The family had simply vanished without a trace. On October 12, 2025, the active phase of the search operation was officially suspended. Not a single trace of the family had been found. The main theory of the investigators remained an accident, but no bodies have been ever discovered, no backpacks, no signs of struggle, no scattered belongings, nothing. Now let's talk about some of the strange facts and coincidences that investigators discovered during the case. First, the family did not register their route with rescue services, which made the initial search much more difficult. In this region, hikers are usually required to register their routes if they plan to enter remote or difficult terrain. For police and rescue teams, knowing the exact route and expected return time is extremely important. If someone goes missing, it helps determine where to start the search. Most likely, the family planned only a short hike. They had visited this area several times before and were familiar with it, so they probably didn't feel the need to register their trip. The second strange detail happened on the day of the disappearance. At the viewpoint where they met another tourists, Yaroslava Baranova and her daughter, Irina was actively taking photos with her phone, but oddly enough, none of those photos were ever posted on her social medias, even though she usually shared pictures from her trips in real time. Another curious detail emerged from the day before the disappearance. On September 27, Sergei Usoltsev stopped in the small village of Mina and bought water and snacks at a local store. But he also purchased a folding knife. Store employees later confirmed the purchase. They also said that Sergei spent quite a while talking with someone outside the store before the family drove away. Some people found this unusual. Why would an experienced hiker suddenly need to buy a knife before a simple walk in the forest? Interestingly, similar equipment had never appeared in the family's travel videos before. Personally, this detail may not be that suspicious. It's possible Sergei simply forgot his knife at home and decided to buy another one. A knife is a fairly normal and useful item on a hiking trip. Police also searched the family's apartment. All valuables were still there. Nothing appeared to be missing. However, investigators were drawn to one particular item, Irina's notebook. On one page there was a sentence written in Russian that roughly translated to "Sometimes disappearing can be the only way to start living." This line sparked a lot of speculation online. Did the Usoltsev family plan to disappear on purpose? Or was Irina writing about herself, perhaps hinting at the problems in her marriage? As we mentioned earlier, one of her friends said the couple had been close to divorce. Another piece of testimony came from a local resident. There is no official confirmation of this, so it's up to you whether you believe it or not. Around 6 p.m. on September 28, a woman called Maria Evgenievna, who lives in Kuturchin, said she heard a sharp child's scream coming from the mountain. At that moment, she and her friend were standing on a hill overlooking the village. She described the sound as sudden and frightened, not like the call of an animal. A few minutes later, a strong gust of wind swept through the area and dark storm clouds began forming on the horizon. In the village, the geese suddenly started honking loudly, something locals say often happens when the weather is about to change. Maria only learned about the family's disappearance 2 days later. That's when she began to wonder whether she had actually heard the last moments of their lives. Of course, it could have been an animal or a bird. But on the other hand, Maria has lived in this area her entire life, and she is very familiar with the sounds of the local wildlife. The timing is also strange. The scream reportedly happened about an hour after the family had been seen at the scenic viewpoint. Around that same time, they should have been near the Korchagins' house. It's possible Maria mixed up the time, or perhaps the sound really did come from an animal. Irina's older son Daniil stayed in Krasnoyarsk with his grandmother. He became very involved in the search, posting missing person announcements and communicating with volunteers. In an interview with local media, he said, "My mom would never just leave me, and if something had happened, she would have found a way to let me know. I believe they're out there somewhere, waiting for help. Maybe they're injured, maybe they're trapped in a cave, but alive." Daniil even tried searching for them himself. According to him, he went into the forest alone and searched until around 7 p.m. Later, he gathered a group of friends who were experienced hikers to continue looking. Eventually, rescue teams told him he was not allowed to continue searching without official supervision because the conditions had become too dangerous. Daniil said his stepfather Sergei was an experienced outdoorsman who knew how to navigate the taiga. Sergei had even taught him survival skills like marking trees to keep track of your road. Daniil believes the family only planned a short trip. As evidence, he mentioned something simple but telling. The family left their cat at home with only a small supply of food. They left enough food and water for the cat for about 2 days, he said. When I arrived on Tuesday, the food was already gone and there was barely any water left. Of course, Daniil still hopes for the best, but survival experts say the reality is harsh. At temperatures around -5 without shelter, warm clothing or food, survival time is usually 48 to 72 hours. And Now, nearly 6 months have passed since the disappearance. The chances of survival are almost zero. What do local residents think? A Siberian hunter named Alexander Bagayev shared his opinion. My conclusion is that they are not there anymore. When people move through the forest, they leave traces. Professionals searched the area and there were many motivated volunteers. 3 people are not a needle in a haystack. Most likely there was some kind of conflict. They were killed and taken somewhere else. According to Bagayev, moving quickly through the taiga requires a lot of effort, and lost hikers would inevitably leaving many signs behind. Broken branches, flattened grass, torn moss, shifted rocks, broken twigs, signs of a campsite. Another wildlife expert, Dmitry Belenyuk, expressed a similar opinion earlier. He said that if the family had died in the forest, animals would eventually have discovered the bodies. Another local resident named Sergei pointed out how dangerous the area itself can be. This place is very dangerous and people underestimate it. The rocks here are covered with moss. When it gets wet, it becomes totally slippery, and the stones are huge. If someone slips and falls, they could easily be seriously injured. Since Soviet times, this area has even had restrictions on certain roads. Local hunters also say that in this region, wolves are often considered a bigger threat than bears. Now let's look at the main theories about what might have happened. There are many different versions online, but I'll focus on the most common and realistic ones. Theory number 1. An accident. This is official theory. The family may have simply gotten lost in the difficult terrain. The landscape in this area is complex and the weather worsened in the evening. It became colder and fog appeared. In such conditions, it's easy to lose the trail. At some point, an accident could have happened, and the bodies might be still there in a location that is extremely difficult to reach. Theory number 2. A natural trap. Rescuers discovered deep mining shafts and natural vertical cracks in the ground in this area. These openings can be nearly invisible in low light or hidden under grass. If the family stepped into one of these crevices, they could have fallen inside without leaving any visible traces on the surface. Many rescuers consider this one of the most likely explanations. Theory number 3. Wild animals. Some survival experts believe the family may have encountered a wild animal, such as bear or wolves. Perhaps they heard something in the forest and tried to hide or escape, accidentally leaving the trail. However, if there had been an animal attack, investigators would likely have found some evidence, torn clothing, scattered belongings, or other traces. But nothing like that was ever discovered. Another theory suggests that the disappearance might have been intentional. According to some reports, Sergei's business had financial problems. His company had accumulated debts and fines. It was also reported that Sergei was required to submit a financial report about the government grant his company had received. The report was due 2 weeks after the hiking trip. This brings us back to the Korchagin family. If the disappearance was staged, Viktor Korchagin, who claimed he saw the family get into another vehicle, might actually have been telling the truth. Perhaps the family arrived in their own car, then switched to another vehicle and left. If they had continued driving in their own car, police could easily track them using road cameras. but with another vehicle it would be much harder to trace their route. However, the Korchagin's house hides another interesting detail. Some observers noticed something unusual nearby: a windsock, the kind normally used at airfields to show wind direction. Journalists investigated further and discovered that behind the Korchagin house there is reportedly a helicopter landing area. Local residents confirmed that people in the village have known about it for years. According to locals, the landing site was built for a long-time friend of Victor and Lydia. Several years ago, he purchased land deep in the taiga near the upper Mina River and built a base there. There are no roads leading to it. The only way to reach it is by helicopter. Locals say this friend often flies through the village. On the way to his base, he stops by Kuturchin, they say. He brings groceries from the city and they give him mushrooms and berries. They've been friends for years. Sometimes he flies in several times a week. Journalists asked police about the helicopter site. The official response was, "In the area where the Usoltsev family disappeared, there are no official helicopter landing sites. Even rescue helicopters had to land far away. Besides, the weather had become so bad that no one would have been flying at that time." However, when family left their car, the weather was still good and remained that way for several hours. Tourists have also reported seeing helicopter in the area. For example, a visitor from Krasnoyarsk recorded a video in 2022 showing a white helicopter taking off behind the Korchagin house. Such a helicopter could easily carry 3 passengers. Pilots are supposed to report every flight to National Air Traffic Services, but sometimes illegal flights do happen. In remote areas like taiga, tracking them can be extremely difficult. As locals often say, there is only one real law in the taiga, the law of the taiga. Of course, if the family really planned to disappear, escaping by car would probably be easier and less noticeable than flying away in a noisy helicopter. But there is another angle. If police started searching, the first thing they would check road cameras and look for vehicles leaving the area. A helicopter could have taken the family somewhere completely different, far away from the original search zone. From there, they could have traveled anywhere. However, several facts contradict the escape theory. Police confirmed that the family made no bank transfers, purchased no tickets, and left all their savings in their accounts. Sergei's company funds were also untouched. They had plans to build a house in Russia, something they had told friends about many times, and escaping with a 5-year-old child would be extremely difficult. Also, their passports were found in the car. Irina's son, Daniil, strongly rejected the idea that his parents ran away. Even logically, it doesn't make sense. My mom is a very sentimental person. She would have at least found someone to take care of the cat. She would have told me. Living forever without saying goodbye to her first child, that's not who she is. Still, the strange behavior of the Korchagins continues to raise questions. Lydia said the family went one direction, then later told neighbors they went another. Victor said the family got into another car. The stories don't match. Could Lydia or someone she knew have helped the family escape? Or did the couple witness something and stay silent out of fear? Another theory suggests the family may have become victims of a crime. Perhaps there was a conflict with locals or other people in the area, Robbery seems unlikely since all valuable belongings were left in the car. Some wonder whether Sergei's deaths might have been involved. Could the family have encountered poachers in the forest? Police have not confirmed any evidence of a crime, but they have not completely ruled it out either. Other theories exist as well. Kidnapping, Sergei harming his own family, secret cults hidden in the forest, secret military facilities. But you understand that the locals would definitely know something about it. If they know about Korchagin family's helipad, they would also know something about secret facility, and of course various paranormal explanations. Search efforts still occasionally resume, but a full search operation will likely only continue in the spring, when the snow melts and hidden paths and crevices become visible again. Working conditions will be safer, and rescuers will be able to reach areas that are currently inaccessible. In that region, snow usually begins to melt around late April. Birds, such as eagles and ravens, can sometimes help search teams because they are drawn to decomposition and may circle above searching locations. Perhaps one day rescuers will finally find at least some trace of the Usoltsev family. So, what do you think about this case? What do you believe happened to them? If it was an accident, why hasn't anything been found after all this time? Not a backpack, not a phone, not even a single piece of fabric. Personally, I keep coming back to the Korchagin family. Their statements were very strange. They never reported the missing hikers, even though they seemed worried. And then there is this helicopter landing site, something the local residents seems to know about, but rescuers claim doesn't exist. It makes me feel like they might be hiding something. But if they are not involved, why would they do this? I honestly can't figure it out. Let me know what do you think in the comments. I would really like to hear your theories about this case. If there is any major updates of the case or it's ever solved, I'll make sure to post about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!
Если тебя сейчас поймают, и что? Что у тебя есть? Крепкие у тебя нитки есть.